Hallo Leute, ich bin Katja und ihr seht Deutsch für euch. As I announced in our last grammar session, today I will talk a bit more about what types of subordinate clauses there are in German. There will be many parallels to the way this works in English, but I think it will be interesting to look at the things that are different. Also, I'm not that sure if you're all aware of how things work in English. Nebensätze that are started with Konjunktionen, conjunctions. Conjunctions are words like and, when, because, if, therefore, and so on and so forth. In German, there are two main groups of conjunctions. The first group connects two main clauses, two subordinate clauses, or two segments of a sentence. These are words like and, or, but, so und, oder, aber. The second group connects a main clause and a subordinate clause. If we have a conjunction of the first group connecting two main clauses, we get the same pattern twice. Before, left verb, between, optional right verb, conjunction. Optional before, left verb, between, optional right verb, and so on and so forth. So that means, like we learned in our video about the after section, every after section is just a construct of all other segments together again. So an example would be, die junge Frau geht in die Küche und trinkt ein Glas Wasser. Since the subject stays the same for both of these main clauses, we don't need to mention it again. The second one, we could, but it's optional. If you do reuse it though, use a pronoun. Don't say, die junge Frau geht in die Küche und die junge Frau trinkt ein Glas Wasser. That's overkill. But you can say, die junge Frau geht in die Küche und sie trinkt ein Glas Wasser. We can do the same thing connecting two subordinate clauses, of course. So for example, die junge Frau geht in die Küche, ein Glas Wasser zu trinken und sich auszuruhen. In this case, the part after our conjunction gets a bit shorter, but it still has the same word order that a Nebensatz has to have. And of course, we have the thing of connecting two segments. So for example, ich habe einen Apfel und eine Birne. And the same thing happens when we use but. Die Frau ist im Wohnzimmer, aber sie möchte lieber in der Küche sein. Yeah, sandwich jokes, okay, calm your pants. With the second group of conjunctions, it's a bit different. These are words like because and when, so weil and wenn. What happens here is that after our between section, or if there is one after the infinite part of our predicate, we insert a comma, because that is how we separate a main clause and a subordinate clause in German, blanked out there for a second. And then we start that sentence after the comma with a conjunction. This conjunction kind of steals the left verb position, so we don't have to worry about a before section here. Because we start with a conjunction and the conjunction kind of, sits in for the left verb. Because, as you may remember from Syntax 2, which was episode 37 that you should go watch right now if you haven't seen it yet, the predicate in a subordinate clause, so the finite part of the predicate, so the thing that actually expresses what's going on, goes at the end of a subordinate clause. So that means in the subordinate clause started by a conjunction, it's always conjunction between infinite verb part, finite verb part, and sie. So an example would be, die junge Frau trinkt Wasser, weil sie durstig ist. And with two parts of the predicate, die junge Frau geht in die Küche, weil sie Wasser trinken will. And die junge Frau trinkt Wasser, wenn sie in die Küche geht. These sentences can also be turned around. Weil die junge Frau durstig ist, geht sie in die Küche. Weil die junge Frau Wasser trinken will, geht sie in die Küche. Wenn die junge Frau in die Küche geht, trinkt sie Wasser. Two important things here. First of all, you will notice that if the main clause comes second, we have our left verb first and our subject goes into the between section. It's not like in English. It is not she drinks water, but drinks she water. This doesn't make sense in English, but that is the word order in German. The second important thing, even when we change the order of the subordinate clause and the main clause, both keep their structure. So that means even though it is in front now, the subordinate clause still is a subordinate clause. Meaning that it still starts with a conjunction and it only has a verb in the right verb position, not in the left one. Like I mentioned before, it is possible to add another after section to the subordinate clause or to the main clause. Die junge Frau trinkt Wasser, weil sie durstig ist und Zeit hat. Or Die junge Frau trinkt Wasser, weil sie durstig ist und geht dann arbeiten. In the first example, the und connects two subordinate clauses, while in the second example it connects two main clauses with a subordinate clause in between. So that means a subordinate clause doesn't have to stand at the end of a sentence. What you have to make sure is that you place the predicate right. That is what makes a subordinate clause, not where it is in relation to the main clause. If you don't know what I'm talking about still, as I said, go rewatch Syntax 2. These different subordinate clauses started by conjunctions have different names or categories that they're put into based on what purpose they have. So for example, if you were to form a subordinate clause that starts with weil, so because, that would be a causal Satz, because it expresses a meaning, causal meaning. But we won't get into those right now. The important thing for you is to know that there are conjunctions that are followed by the main clause order of words, and that there are conjunctions followed by the subordinate order of words. Which is why next week's vocabulary/grammar episode will be about conjunctions. I won't name all of them because I think there are a bit too much of them, but I will try to find the most important ones from each category, because you need those to really have a conversation with people. And then in our next grammar episode, we will get back to the other categories of subordinate clauses there are. So that means that's it for today. Your random word of the week is die Tasse. Bis nächste Woche. Tschüss!